speaker today is Mr. Kerry Holtzman.
Check 1, 2. Can I hear me? There we go.
You're on.
All right. Thank you. What a great introduction. I'm going to bring you with me where I go. That's good. All right. Here we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy 2014. Hope everybody is ready for the new year and had a good holidays, I hope. You're out of the snow. That's a good thing. Typically. Anybody here not seen me before? A few of you, welcome. For the benefit of those who haven't seen me before, my name is Kerry Holtzman, and I've been in the computer business, the IT, information technology realm, since the 80s, the mid-80s, professionally since the early 90s. And my specialty is primarily it's hardware. It's the parts that make up the computer, but also the operating systems. And I like to explain things to people in a way that I wish they had been explained to me. So I hope that works for you. It typically goes over pretty well. I'd like to take something you already know that has nothing to do with computers and use that as an analogy in how it is very similar to computers. For example, a very common one and one of my favorites is talking about antivirus. When somebody calls me and says, I've got a virus, can you remove it? And of course I can remove it. And they say, well, here's what I don't understand. I've got antivirus software, so how could I possibly have an antivirus? Or, how could I possibly have a virus if I've got Norton, McAfee, whatever it's called? Well, that antivirus software doesn't give you permission or make you exempt from getting a virus 100%. Any more than driving a Volvo is rated as safest car you can buy, or it has been, isn't going to guarantee that you're going to not get into an accident, or if you are in an accident that you won't be fatally wounded or severely injured. There is a responsibility to the driver behind the wheel. You don't get to say, I really find driving too complicated, so just get me a really safe car. No. So these are the types of analogies I like to use, and then this is what you can come to expect from me in the next hour or so while I'm up here. Now, I never know what I'm going to talk about. I have some guidelines. For example, Windows XP is going away. We're going to talk about that. What does that mean? But was that a yay?
Hooray!
Hooray? I wish more people had that attitude. I'm also filming this. I've got a YouTube channel. That's what's playing here. I'm building a computer that looks like a train. You know, computers don't have to be square boxes. They can have all different kinds of shapes and designs, and I like that. And so in this video, I'm showing people how to build it step by step, kind of like a cooking show, like a chef showing you how to make something similar. So if that's of interest to you, I'd strongly suggest you check out my YouTube channel when you have some free time, because the videos are always available for free, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So while I'll be filming, in fact I am filming this presentation, and as long as my audio comes out okay and the battery lasts, then my intention is to put this presentation up on YouTube as well for other people to enjoy it. But what makes the presentation good, believe it or not, it isn't a script and it isn't well rehearsed. That's not what does it for me. What does it for what I think makes the presentation more compelling is your participation in it. And what do I mean by that? Well, I can come up here and I can talk to you about the things I want to talk about, but you may have no interest in what I want to talk about. So then we're just wasting each other's time. So rather than do that, as I talk about some things, if it springs to mind a question, I'd like you to just raise your hand or shout it out or bring it forward. And those of you who do ask the questions, those of you who are brave enough to ask the questions, I think are going to step out of this today enjoying it more than the people who just watched it, who were just spectators.
Gary, I will take a mic to whoever has a question.
That's great. Okay. So we'll bring a mic around when that time comes. So I'm going to get things started here by talking about the demise of Windows XP. How many people here are still running Windows XP? We've got about a dozen people in the room running XP. That's not too bad. I was expecting it to be much worse. Here's what happens. Every second Tuesday of the month, Microsoft releases updates to their operating systems. And those updates are to protect, to repair exploits that have been discovered in the operating system. Someone has found a way to use the operating system in a way it was never thought anybody would ever use it. It was never even conceived of, and now they have to fix that in order to protect everybody against that threat. Software code is made up of hundreds of millions of lines in an operating system. Windows 7 has even more codes of programming, more lines of code of programming than Windows XP does. And so as these operating systems continue to evolve, they get more complex. And the more complex they become, then the more likely it's going to be that there's little backdoors that are found, little ways of tricking the system. It would be like if you made a screwdriver and someone used it as a chisel. And you're like, oh, I never thought anybody would use it as a chisel. Now I have to design the screwdriver in a way that it can't be used as a chisel. And then someone else stabs somebody with it. And you go, oh, it's not supposed to be used as a knife. Now I got to redesign it. And so that's what they're doing with operating systems all the time. The problem is, when they come out with these updates, the hackers, and hackers really not the right word for it, because hackers are usually good people, but the crackers or the bad people, they will take the update apart to see what it's fixing. They'll reverse engineer it. And then when Microsoft releases the fix, they're effectively telling everybody what's broken who didn't know. So if you don't get the update, because you think updates are bad for your computer, then you remain vulnerable to whatever that update fixes. So if you say, for example, I'm not going to get that flu shot this year, because last year, a lot of people I know got the flu shot, got really, really sick. So instead, I'm just going to get the flu, and I'm going to get really, really sick. So, some wars you can't win. Let me turn this video off, it's distracting me. So, when support for Windows XP ends, what that means is Microsoft is no longer going to release those updates. Ever. So perhaps the existing updates will still be available for a certain period of time. But any exploit that is discovered from April 8th, 2014 into infinity, into the future, will remain ignored by Microsoft. Which means every day and every week and every month, XP becomes more and more vulnerable to being infected. Now, whether or not that infection is obvious or not, you know, a good virus you'll never know you've got. And they like to do things like record every keystroke you make, so they know you went to www.bankofamerica.com and you typed in this account number and this password, and you're sending it all to them. Now, just getting a new operating system is not a guarantee you're not going to get hacked, but it certainly puts the odds in your favor versus sticking with XP. XP isn't going to stop working. On April 9th, it's still going to work the same way it did the day before and the month before that. But it's going to remain unpatched. And then, after a few months, maybe even a year, it's hard for me to say, you go to Fry's or somewhere, you buy a new printer. And that printer won't have drivers for Windows XP. You will not be able to use it. And if you call the company, they'll tell you, sorry, you need to move on to Windows 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever version happens to, whatever the latest is out. To give you some idea or some reference, Microsoft used to release an operating system every 2 to 3 years. So we had DOS 3.3, well, we had 3.0 before that, and then DOS 4 and DOS 5 and DOS 6. Eventually we got into Windows. We worked our way to the most common Windows at that time was Windows 3.1 and then 3.11. But what you're going to start seeing in the numbers is about a 2 to 3 year difference. So, for example, Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows Millennium, Windows XP, all those came out within 2 to 3 years of each other. That was the cycle. But when Microsoft released XP back in 2001, 13 years ago, It has outlived any other operating system that they've ever released, and their shareholders were ticked off. Where's the income coming in, Microsoft? Why haven't you done anything with XP? Why are you sitting there and selling the same product? We need to sell new product to all the people who already bought the previous product so we can bring some more revenue in. And Microsoft only answers to the shareholders, not to the customers. And that's like any other publicly owned corporation in America. So people wonder why some of these problems develop. If you've seen Windows 8 and some of the frustrations with it, it's because Microsoft isn't taking it from the perspective we'd like them to take it from, which is from our perspective, the users. It's all about how much money they can make. So it's in their best advantage to make the best product possible. Now, if you went to Windows 7 today, support for Windows 7 isn't scheduled to end until 2020. So you've got a good more than 6 years if you were to get a brand new Windows 7 computer today, which is still twice the amount of time they used to give an operating system. It's still really good. And you know, they initially said Windows XP support was going to end years ago, and they kept extending it, but they won't extend it any further. In fact, the Chinese government recently asked Microsoft to extend it again, and Microsoft told China basically no. So if you have any requests for them, I'm pretty sure it's going to fall on deaf ears. That's an entire country, by the way. They said no. I don't recommend taking any computer that's running Windows XP and putting Windows 7 on it, because that computer wasn't designed to run Windows 7. It's not going to run it well. If you had a small boat being towed by a small car, and now you're going to get a bigger boat, you better get a bigger car. Because the little car may tow that bigger boat, but you're not going to get there very quickly, and it's going to work really hard to do it. Well, that's effectively the same thing that's going to happen if you try putting Windows 7 on a Windows XP computer. It'll run, it's not going to run well. In fact, I don't even like that word run, because run implies moving quickly. I would say it would crawl. So that's coming. Now, eventually, you will reach a point, if you insist on using XP after its expiration, you will reach a point where some piece of software or some piece of hardware that you purchase or you acquire in some way, shape, or form will not install on it. And then, if it's something you really need to have, you will be forced to upgrade at that time. So your choice is to do it at your convenience or to wait until you have to. Anybody here running Windows 98? You know, Windows 98 still works today. I don't know what you'd use it for, and there's probably somebody who will watch this video when I release this video who will leave a comment saying, I still have Windows 98. And I suppose as long as they're not connecting to the internet, that's okay. But trying to find antivirus for Windows 98 would be quite the task. Or trying to get any modern printer to work with it. Even trying to get anything USB. USB did not exist. Wi-Fi did not exist with Windows 98. In fact, neither of those things existed when XP came out. There was a patch with XP that made it USB compatible. Another patch makes it Wi-Fi compatible. If you can imagine over the last 13 years how many patches and what a mess that makes of the coding. Over a decade of just Band-Aid, 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 Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid. That's what XP has become. So as much as I love XP, Windows 7 I also embrace. Windows 8 is, you know, there's a program, it's called Classic Shell. And what Classic Shell does is it gives you back your regular start menu, which is my biggest complaint on Windows 8 or 8.1. And it gets rid of that tiled interface that comes up. Although the 8.1 update will also give you the option to get rid of this modern, I think they call it the modern interface. I still call it the Metro interface from the days when Microsoft was testing it. That's what they called it. And with this program called Classic Shell, which is completely free, and by the way, there are a ton of programs out there that do this. Some charge, some are better than others, and some have features the other ones don't have. But for a very basic one, classicshell.net, I don't know why it took me here, classicshell.net. .com is not the same website. We have to go to .net. See, they just hijacked that. That's not cool. That company hijacked the .com of the same domain name to try and sell you their product and mislead you into thinking you were getting the free product. This is free, and this runs on Windows 8. In my opinion, when Windows 8 or 8.1 has this installed on it, it runs very similarly to Windows 7, and in my experience, on the same computer, it runs faster than Windows 7. But given a choice between the two, I'll take Windows 7, personally. But Windows 8 is workable. It's not this terrible Vista or Windows Millennium thing. Now that's available from classicshell.net. It's open source. It's from a community they called SourceForge. You may have heard of them. SourceForge, if you see any programs that are offered through SourceForge, you know that they are free and community driven, which means they're completely transparent. You can see all the coding. You can contribute to it if you're a programmer or a developer, or even just have ideas to offer some feedback to make the product better, or you have problems you want to report. There's no profit motivation. It's just done out of the enjoyment of doing it by the community. So that's classicshell.net. That is for Windows 8 and 8.1 only. Now, at this point, before I continue, does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
When is that end date for?
Let me, I'll tell you what, let's get a microphone so everybody can hear your question. Sorry.
When is the expiration on the Windows XP?
April 8th, 2014. Now, I want to show you guys something. You guys can relate. You know, kids today, they don't know how good they got it. When I was growing up, in the 70s, needless to say, there was no internet. If you wanted to be an author, or you wanted to make a video, or you wanted to start up a band, if you wanted to get out there and have other people hear you, you really needed someone else's approval to allow you to do that, to give you that opportunity. But with the internet, you want to publish a book, publish it. Do it all yourself. You can sell it on Amazon. You can never have to leave your chair. You want to make some music, you don't even need a band anymore. You can have every instrument loaded right in here, play it the way you want to play it, put it up online, and start building followers.
Question here.
Yes?
You mentioned, is it SourceForge?
Forge. Forge, like a forged steel.
So you just .net or what?
Yeah, classicshell.net.
Well, that's Classic Shell.
They're part of a community called SourceForge.
Oh. Okay.
So if you ever see that something is part of the SourceForge community, you can trust it.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking there was a second thing you go to. But
No, it's the parent of classicshell.net is the sourceforge.com community.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for asking. Now, the reason I bring up the whole power of the internet thing is that when you have a question pretty much about anything, you can go on the internet and you can find the answer to that question. Maybe not the first search result, but if you look at the results, you will see, or you should see, a common pattern to the answers. So, I'll give you some examples here. You want to know when Windows XP support ends, you could go to Google and just type in XP. You could just type XP support ends, or XP support end date. You can see as you start typing, Google will start filling in where it thinks you're going with that question. And I look at the green link in this www.pc connection. I don't want to click on that. I want to click on one from Microsoft. So this one below it is from Microsoft. You see the www.microsoft.com? So that's how I know that's the one I want to look at. And there's your support end date right there. You see how long that took? It's quick. My dog, a big German Shepherd, and he was not leaving me alone. There was something wrong, and I didn't know what was wrong with him. And he kept nudging me, and he'd lay down and get back up, and he'd nudge me again, and he'd lay down and get back up, and he'd pace. And I'm like, something's wrong with my dog. I don't know what's wrong with my dog. And I started looking at his waist, and I started seeing his waist looked a little ballooned. And I've heard of bloat, but I don't know what it is really. I don't understand it. I've never had a dog this big before, and I understand big dogs have this problem. And I typed in, I went to Google, and this is a Friday at about 1 o'clock in the morning because dogs don't get sick during the weekday when businesses are open. And I typed in bloat symptoms. And up came a bunch of websites. Some of them were blogs from veterinarians, or they claimed to be, and I started skimming through them. I was doing it quickly because I didn't know if I was having an emergency on my hands or not. And I could see the same things being said over and over and over, no matter what website I went to, the same things. And basically the dog had a few hours to live, get it to a vet now. His stomach had twisted around, and he's getting gas building up in his stomach, and what's happening is he's starting to look pregnant, and you could flick his side, it sounded like a basketball. And it was the most painful thing I've ever seen a dog ever express pain before like that. I've never seen that before. So I took him to the 24-hour emergency animal clinic. They took him into the back room, they came back out, and they said, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I know how this is going to sound, but I was on the internet, and you're the vet, but I was on the internet. They say you need to stick a tube down his throat and get the air out of his stomach. He goes, well, we want to do surgery, and it's $5,000. I'm like, I don't have $5,000, and that dog's in a lot of pain. So he needs to be put down, or you need to try and get if we can't get the tube to work, I don't know what else we can do. He says, all right, he leaves. He says, basically he tells me it's probably not going to work. I didn't suggest it, I'm the vet. If his stomach's twisted, how am I supposed to get a tube down his throat through a twisted esophagus? I don't know. I just told you what I read online, this is what they say to do. He does it, comes back out, dog's fine. Dog's fine. Got the tube down, the air came out, but the vet warns me his stomach is still twisted. I said, well, from what I read online, when you stick that tube down there, it untwists it in the process. He said, well, I recommend you keep him here for observation. I said, at $192 an hour, I'll take him home, and if he starts to blow it up, I will bring him back. So I took him home, I didn't let him out of my sight. The next morning, I called a local vet surgeon, explained the situation. She said, bring him in. She x-rayed him. She said his stomach it was twisted. It is not twisted anymore. I was right. The vet was wrong. And I didn't know anything 4 hours before. I didn't know anything about this. Dog's fine. He's happy. Everything's good. He had his stomach stapled to not stapled, but tacked to his abdomen so it won't flip like that. Scary thing. Saved his life. Google saved my dog's life. Now, here's what you don't want to do. I got a lump. I'm going to go to WebMD. Oh my God, I've got sickle cell anemia. Pretty sure that's not possible. But the thing about some of this is if you exhibit any bit of hypochondria, do not try and self-diagnose yourself, because you will have everything. So sometimes information is bad, or too much information, and ignorance is bliss. But the great thing about Google is how well those search results come out. I found a pill on the floor, and what's this pill? And it was like a little pink pill with a number on it, and I just went to Google and I typed little pink pill with a number. Came up and it said this is thyroid medication. Who do I know that has thyroid medication? My mom. I called my mom. I said, you left there's a pill on. She's like, throw it away. Well, I don't know, maybe that was an $8 pill. I don't know. But at least I knew what I was throwing away. And it took 2 minutes to figure that out. Stuff we have today, to me is a shame to not see people taking advantage of it, because we basically have the wealth of human knowledge available at our fingertips equally to everybody everywhere in the world for free. Or basically, whatever your internet access costs. And to not see people take advantage of that, is a little frustrating for me because there's such a great opportunity there. So there is a skill to Google searching. You're picking the right words. Words like and, the, of, Windows. Google's more or less going to ignore those words. You don't even need to type them. Just stick with the main subject. And as you practice that, you'll get better and better at it. But pretty much anything you'd want to know, from fixing your car, fixing your computer, fixing your relationship, everything, it's in there. My first advice, though, is probably get off of the computer if fixing the relationship is what you're trying to accomplish. That's just personal experience, so your mileage may vary. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Oh, you're going to be one of those crowds? All right, here we go. We've got a question over here. We can bring the mic. Oh, we've got one over here? Okay, we'll come to you in just a second.
Do you have a recommendation for a password program so I don't have to, I can get rid of my paper?
Yes, there are a couple of great password remembering programs that will not only remember your passwords, but will input them for you. Now, the one I use myself, and you'll see it right up here in the top right corner, it's this little green icon, it's called RoboForm. So, roboform.com is the website, and RoboForm's been around quite a long time. And what RoboForm enables you to do is have one master RoboForm password that releases all of your login and password information to all your websites that you go to. So the harm in it is if somehow somebody gets your RoboForm password, you've basically given them the keys to the vault. I've never had it happen, I've never had a problem with it, but the way it would work is, well, you're going to have, when you install it, this product is about $20 a year. I want to say it's right in that range. I think the first year is a little less. When you install it, you get this icon that's up there on the top right. And you can use it a couple different ways. For example, if I want to log in to one of my accounts, well, let's go to eBay. I can go to ebay.com. And I can have a password that is completely nonsense, just #, number 3, lowercase q, uppercase L. I don't have to remember that. All I have to do is remember my RoboForm password. And what RoboForm will do, when I hit the login button here, which is right up here, we'll go to My eBay. And you'll see how the browser remembers my login name, but it doesn't remember the password. And sometimes the browser will ask you, but I don't ever recommend you let your browser remember your password, because then anybody who uses your computer potentially has access to your, especially anything that deals with money. But if I go to this RoboForm icon right up here, it says, there's a little box there that says there's an account called Carry934. If I just push that button, it says, what's your master password for RoboForm? Not my eBay password, my RoboForm password. Then it puts my eBay password in for me and hits the enter button. So I don't have to even do that. In fact, I could just tell RoboForm, take me to eBay, and it'll take me there and log me in. It's pretty cool. And if you look at my list of logins, there's no way I would remember all of these passwords. I mean, this goes on and on and on, okay? So there's a lot in there. And it enables me to have really, really strong, the password you're supposed to have that none of us really use. You know, the mixture of symbols and numbers and upper and lowercase letters that's at least 12 characters long, that's the best password you can have. So RoboForm will actually generate those passwords for you. You can say, I'm signing into a new site, or this site wants me to change my password. Please create a password for me. RoboForm will create, it'll just randomly generate. You tell it how many characters do you want it to be. How long do you want the password? And it'll generate a random thing, and if you don't like the way that one looks, just say generate another one if you want. And then copy it, highlight it with your mouse, and copy and paste it. And then log in once with it, and RoboForm will say, do you want me to remember that? And you go, yep. And it says, do you want to add a second account, or do you want to replace the account you've got now? So if there's two people using the computer and you're both logging into Chase Bank, it doesn't know if you're just changing your password or changing your account information or you want to add a second. So you just tell it, I want to add this or I want to replace it. It's good to go. It's all backed up, encrypted into the cloud, into the internet, so if your computer's stolen, you don't have to worry about it. If you're traveling, you need to borrow somebody's computer, you need to log in, but you don't know your login information, you go to RoboForm, log in with your RoboForm name and password, and you can use their online version, which doesn't leave anything on the public computer that you're using, so there's no trace left behind. So it's safe to use in a cyber cafe or on a shared computer on a cruise ship or whatever. Anywhere in the world, so you have access to that. We have a question in the back.
Having a problem with malware. It keeps coming up and says there's a new update, but when I click, it's trying to sell me something for one of the little tablets, whatever.
What malware what antivirus do you run on your computer?
Yes.
Yes? Is this Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8?
Windows 7 Home.
Windows 7 Home. When did the problem start?
A couple months ago.
Okay. One of the other things that helps is that you don't put off getting these, what start off as a minor annoyance, because what they do is they break into your house and then they open all the doors and windows and invite all their friends in. So if you kick them out right when they got in there, it'd be a lot easier. There's a program I recommend called Malware Bytes.
That's one I got installed.
Okay. Well, Malware Bytes, which is malicious software, malware, bytes as in bits and bytes, B-Y-T-E-S, .org, is the program that I use and recommend. But Malware Bytes will never be a pest. They have a free version and a paid version. The free version will only help you to clean up infections that you already have. It won't do anything to prevent future infections. The paid version will. But again, none of this stuff is 100%. It's just about statistics, putting the odds in your favor. If Malware Bytes is not removing this thing that you've got, which happens sometimes, there are other programs you can try. However, I wouldn't just go trying them willy-nilly. I would go online, and there are support forums where you can ask people for assistance, and one of those is called techguy.org. So at techguy, not guide, but guys and gals, techguy.org, there is a community of volunteers, so keep that in mind, they're volunteers, and they have what are called forums, and the forums are broken into different categories. So we've got business applications and games and multimedia and hardware and Windows 8, Windows 7, and what we're looking for is probably going to be Windows 7 is where we would start, and then within that folder you could post a question and say, when my computer starts up, and then I put it verbatim exactly as you see it on your screen, whatever the post is that you're seeing. And then the folks on here will respond back to you typically within a few hours and recommend the steps that you need to take to remove that. And they ask you to follow up with them so that if those steps don't work, they can give you alternate steps. And they will work with you until they reach a point of running out of ideas or the problem's resolved, whichever happens first. They're all volunteers, so the quality of your answer, you may sometimes even get conflicting answers from 2 or 3 people answering you at the same time. You just have to use your best judgment on which one you think is the right way to go.
What about uninstalling? What about uninstalling my current version and reinstalling a newer version?
Newer version of what?
Of Malware Bytes.
Malware Bytes should always be the current version. It updates itself.
When I go to update, it will not, the update is not highlighted, so I can't get new updates.
If that's the case, then it may be that the malware that's on your machine has disabled it. You may not be able to uninstall and reinstall it. You could try. That wouldn't happen. I'm guessing you don't have the paid version of Malwarebytes?
No,
It's the free version?
your recommendation goes to free, so,
You went with the free version.
yes.
If you had the paid version, it probably wouldn't have happened because Malwarebytes probably would have stopped it. But because you've got the free version, all it can do is help to clean up an infection after the fact. And you're probably going to have to use another product because I think that product was damaged by the malware. You certainly can try uninstalling it and reinstalling it. It's not going to hurt. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's not working. If it's not updating, it doesn't work anyway. So, certainly worth a try. We have a question over here. We're going to make Joe exercise today. I think 18 times around is a mile.
Kind of relates to what you said about RoboFarm. Okay, in a few weeks, I want to start doing my income taxes over TurboTax. Right now, from my site, I can go through the towers, which is totally insecure. I've got a Cricket system, which is a hotspot, which I think is similar to Verizon hotspots, or I can go to the computer lab. So my question basically is, if I've got RoboForm and all of this, am I safe on all of those, or can you comment on one versus the other?
Well, RoboForm is completely irrelevant to that question. You're asking me if the color of the car is going to make the car more reliable. The color is irrelevant. When you use a public computer and a public internet connection, then you're putting your information out there in the public. Okay. So if you provide your own computer, and let's say you go to Starbucks and you use Starbucks Wi-Fi, you run into a couple of different problems there. One, you really don't know if you're on Starbucks Wi-Fi. I know you connected to something called Starbucks Wi-Fi, but somebody sitting next to you or the next building over could have created that, and you're actually connecting to them, and they just called it. Because they can call it anything they want to call it. So that's called, well, it's basically like an evil twin, is a word for that. They also do something called a man-in-the-middle attack, where they sit invisibly between you and the connection, and they eavesdrop over all the transmission back and forth. The way you can avoid that from happening is by bringing your own internet connection with you, which would be like Verizon or Cricket. You know, it's a cellular thing that's private like your cell phone. Now, you still have people who are going to look over your shoulder, right? And I've talked about this before. People go, well, so cell phone connections safe to use. Well, it's safe to use within reason. There are still other threats that we know. When we talk about all the technical threats, somehow, for some reason, the media and everybody else overlooks the most common threat, which is yourself. What do I mean? This is what I mean. Yeah, I'd like to order that. My credit card number, I'm sorry, can you hear me? 5824. And you know, everybody around you can hear you. You just gave it to them. So all of the locks on the doors don't matter if you're going to leave the windows open. So, you know, keep that in mind. I read a blog about a guy who was at a Starbucks, and there was a gentleman there doing taxes for customers at Starbucks, got up and walked away from his computer with all of the person's information on his screen. Now, no harm came of it, but unfortunately, somebody who writes for a living would happen to be at Starbucks and watched this and wrote about it. And what that means is even you could do everything right. You can give your taxes to somebody to do, and then they can turn around and give your personal information out to other people completely unknowingly. So all you can do really is the best you can do. I mean, you know, Target got hit really hard this year with a hack that basically got everybody's credit card. So even though you used your credit card properly, you didn't do anything wrong, you still could potentially be a victim of identity theft because Target dropped the ball. So people on both sides of the transaction have to be secure. So my advice is anytime you're going to deal with anything with money, Don't use a public computer, use your own computer, and don't use an internet access point that isn't yours. I don't even care if you're paying for it, because if you're paying for it, it's still not yours. In other words, if you go to Starbucks and you pay them to use their Wi-Fi, so is everybody else. And you don't know if there's other hackers in there that you don't know what they're looking at on their screen. They might be looking at your screen on their screen. Maybe not. Maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of it than it really is. This is the bigger problems in high density areas in New York and Boston, Chicago, where there's a lot of people in a little space. But I'm going to play it safe and just recommend if you're going to do anything with money, anything financial whatsoever, do it on your own internet connection and your own computer. And make sure that that computer is updated with all the latest updates and has current antivirus on it.
Question here.
Yes?
Well, my question was getting back to Google. When I go on Google, then I get so much, then I'm almost overwhelmed with all the things. Is there any way to
Narrow it down.
simplify that? Or?
Well, the accuracy of the question, the more specific the question is, the more specific the answer is going to be. And that's when we get back to learning how to search effectively. For example, if I type how to fix Windows 7, I'm going to get a lot of results. How to fix what? Hardware, software, update, what is it you're trying to fix? So that question was too vague. If I misspell, if I say, I want to see Gary Holzman's YouTube videos and I type in Gary Oldman, I'm going to get a different guy. So Gary Oldman videos, that is not me. So you're going to get frustrated in your search because you're not searching for the right thing. If I type in, I have business cards up here, whatever you need as a reference, Gary Holzman video, make sure that the name's typed correctly, then you don't even have to go to YouTube. Right in Google, the videos start popping up, along with articles I've written and information about me. They have a word for that, which eludes me, but when people Google themselves, you might be surprised what information's out there. It wouldn't hurt you to check, because you may have your address and phone number published out there, and you may not want it published out there. And any website that is publishing it, you will remove it if you request it, if that's what you want to do. I mean, I put myself out there, so that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. However, I recognize it does bother a lot of people, and we go back to being blissfully unaware. So really, I think the trick is practicing like anything else until you should see within the first page of results the answer to the question that you've asked. You shouldn't have to go any further than that. Google's that good. So it's really just a matter of experimenting with what words you need to tell Google to look for. And the more unique a word is, the better. My dad will cut out newspaper articles in the Las Vegas Journal and mail them to me. I go, Dad, do you know these are online? You could just email it. You don't have to put an envelope and a stamp. And he goes, well, how would I find it? I go, you find something unique about the article, like the author's name. But then the author probably has an article a day they write for the newspaper, so you need more than that. So we get the author's name, the city is Las Vegas, so I'll put the author's name, Las Vegas, and then something about the article. So in this article, she reviewed or interviewed Joe Smith. So I'll type in Joe Smith next to the author's name and Las Vegas. Those three things, boom, first search result is exactly what I wanted. Does that make sense? If the article was about fixing computers and I just typed in Las Vegas Review Journal fixing computers, it's too vague. And he didn't believe me. He's like, no, I looked for it. It's not online. And I just emailed it right back. I said, look, if you want to keep cutting these things out and mail them to me, that's fine, but you don't have to do that. If they published it in the paper, most places also publish it online at the same time. Usually it gets published online first. Let's get the microphone around here.
When doing the search on Google, or if you have Yahoo, for example, issue, and you type it on the address bar, and you're doing quite a bit of searching and looking, would it be wise to, and I don't find it on all those websites. For example, Google on the top will say history.
Yeah.
I'll click on that, it brings it down and shows me all the different websites I've gone to during the day.
Right.
Is it wise to clear that so you keep the machine running smooth and faster? I mean, keep the speed?
It has nothing to do with the speed of the computer. It's all to do with your privacy. If anybody else uses that computer and you don't want them to see where you've been, you can have that clear out automatically or not store it at all in the settings of the browser. Yeah, most people like that though, because then if they're revisiting someplace they've already been, they don't have to type the whole thing, and they start to type it. It says, I assume that's where you want to go, and you get there quicker. And that's why they're doing it. There are some people that are conspiracy theorists who have a bit more of an extreme, let's see, there's my Malware Bytes wanting to update right there. To me, have a bit of an extreme attitude about not wanting anybody to know anything about them. And that's fine. You know, those options exist there to address that concern. Yes, sir.
In the past, you've shown us some tech toys.
I have.
Any new tech toys to show us?
Well, you know, I'm always trying to find something new and interesting to bring by. There is a new tech toy I have, but I'm not ready to show it yet. I was in my very first ever car accident, and somebody did something really, really stupid. Basically, you know, cars are waiting to turn left, and I'm coming through the intersection, and the second car, behind the one waiting to turn, initiated a U-turn, and I went right into the side of them. Now, if I had a dash cam, ultimately everything worked out. I mean, their insurance company accepted liability, thankfully, but if they didn't, I asked the cop, there's cameras on the street light, can you pull the cameras? He said, we don't have access to the camera. Well, why are they there? So the cop's asking me what happened, the cop asked the other person what happened, and nobody stuck around. In fact, the guy waiting to turn, we collided, it's clear to turn. So I've got a dash cam, and I'm really excited to use it because you drive, right? You see don't you wish sometimes you had a camera?
Or a gun.
Well, I believe in karma, and I think these people will take care of themselves given enough time and enough rope. So I'm not worried about that. But there are some really popular videos on YouTube that are coming out of Russia, because in Russia it's like the Wild West out there on the roads. You've seen them, right? So everybody's got these dash cams in Russia, and they're just catching this amazing stuff. And the first thing is, well, who's driving around with a camera? But they're not. It's like a little GPS. It'll mount to your mirror. The one I've got actually has two cameras. One points. I'm not going to hook up the rear camera because you have to run a wire, but it'll actually film both behind you and in front of you, and it just constantly records. And when an event happens, you just push a button, and it saves that piece on most of them. And so I'll be curious to try this out, see how it works, and see what the quality looks like. The quality varies, the prices range. They have these things for $25 that are really junk from the reviews I'm reading, going up to $300-400 where they completely replace your rear view mirror. They snap over your rear view mirror and plug it into the cigarette lighter, and it's good to go. It's that easy to set up some of these. So that's a new tech gadget that I will be soon reviewing and taking a look at. And there's been so many moments where I wish I had that. And I've had a lot of close calls driving, and even just that would have been great to have. So that's the latest. There really hasn't been a lot of change with cell phones and GPSs and digital cameras. They're mostly, more megapixels, maybe a little quicker, maybe a little bit smaller. A lot of stuff is going away. It's predicted. Car keys are going away. GPSs are going away. All this stuff is, people are using their smartphones for GPSs, and cars are coming with them, and that's the prediction. They could be completely wrong, but that's the prediction. But to answer your question, no. No, I didn't bring any toys with me today. It's a long way to get to that no, wasn't it? All right, we've got a question right over here. Yes?
My question is, I have a computer that has Windows 7 on it, and I have a deal with Best Buy that they'll erase it and pick all the bugs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Okay. So in November, I took it in and had it completely erased because it was running very slow. I got it back and it ran fast. Now I can't get Internet Explorer to come up, and you wait and wait and wait. Do I have another virus?
It sounds that way, or it sounds... One of the issues we run into is there are several components that make up a computer. And so the first thing we have to diagnose whenever there's any computer problem is it a problem with the hardware? So the hardware are the physical components that make up the computer. You can hold hardware in your hands. Or is it the software? So the software are the bits and bytes, the data, which you cannot hold in your hands. It exists solely as data. So that's the first question. Do you have a hard drive that's perhaps failing that could be causing that symptom?
I
Or
wondered that before.
that's possible. When a hard drive dies, and all hard drives will die eventually, it may just stop working like a light bulb. You know, one day it worked fine for 2 years, and one day you turn it on and nothing. That's usually how they die. And that's why we always tell people to back up, back up, back up, back up, because it's what you're not expecting that you're protecting yourself from. All too often I get calls from saying, my computer's acting up, should I be backing it up? You should have been backing it up before it was acting up, if you have anything that's important on it. And basically what's got to happen is your computer needs to be looked at, and someone needs to determine, is this a software problem or a hardware problem? One of the most basic ways somebody can do that, somebody who's not trained in computers at all, which is kind of the way Best Buy does it, they wipe the computer clean and put it back to the way it was when it came out of the box. That way they know the software is good. So if the problem still exists, it's got to be something with the hardware. The problem with that is when they do that, they wipe out all your programs, all of your data, all of your customization, and they say, that's on you, that's not on us, that's your responsibility. Well, you could wipe it out yourself and use the restore disks yourself. You don't need to go out of your way and go to them and let them push the buttons for you. There's really no special education required for that. You just follow the prompts on the screen. If you do that and it doesn't work, then you've done it for nothing. You've lost all of that for nothing, and you will have to take it to somebody to have them determine what the problem is from that point forward. That's the process. So with any computer problem, first of all, is it a hardware problem or a software problem? And I'd even take a step before that, and the very famous line is, have you tried turning it off and on again? That's always the first step. Unplug it, turn it off, let it sit for a minute, plug it back in, turn it on. Same problem? Okay. A lot of times that fixes it. But if you have a consistent thing like that, software or hardware, that's the first thing. It could be a virus, it could be a failing hard drive. Because some hard drives, where I was going with that earlier, some hard drives will start to fail. And they'll start to skip like a record, where it's trying to read a bad spot and it can't read it, so it keeps trying over and over and over, and then it just gives up and moves to the next spot. But if the next spot is also bad, what it appears to you as the user are these long delays. And the way you know it's doing it is you'll have a light on the front of the computer that blinks anytime the hard drive reads or writes. And if that light is staying on constantly, well, the computer's doing nothing. That suggests to me that a virus is busy writing or reading something, or the hard drive is having trouble reading a spot. Now there's a program you can use, and it's completely for free, and it's not that technical, and it's called Crystal Disk Info. And I have a video showing you how to download it and use it. So if I just type in, let's see, I'm going to try and find my own video with Google. Now, not all search engines are the same. The reason you see me using Google and not Yahoo and not Bing and not Ask.com is because, in my opinion, and pardon my honesty, they suck. Google just has almost a magical, it reads my mind. It knows exactly, when I type in what I'm looking, let me just demonstrate it and I'll show you. So I want my video on Crystal Disk Info. So I'm going to type my name, Kerry Holzman, and Crystal Disk Info. And press enter. And look, the very first link that Google offered me, the top one, is the exact one I wanted. So I was very specific with what I wanted, and Google was very specific with its answer. Now in this video, I show you this free program. You don't even have to install it. You can actually just run the program without installing it.
Hi, my name is Kerry.
And what it does is it'll read what's called the SMART information. SMART is the self-monitoring and reporting technology, SMART, included with hard drives in the last 10 years. The idea behind it is it can report the drive's health when it's starting to fail. So on this video, I take you to the website, I show you where the website is, and I walk you through the entire process of acquiring the file and then executing the file and then translating what appears on the screen. But translating it's very easy because ultimately you see this big yellow caution that's on the screen there? That means that drive is failing. If that yellow box was a red box, that means that drive is pretty much gone. And if that yellow box was a blue box, it would say good. And that would suggest to me the drive is probably okay. It takes just seconds to run. And it's completely free. And probably out of everybody in this room, 10% of you have a drive that's failing. Probably. But until it starts showing you symptoms, you may not be aware of it. So this is a nice little diagnostic that you can run yourself. You don't have to be a tech to do it. And have some assurance that everything, at least as far as the hard drive goes. The hard drive is what holds all your data. That's the most important part for most people. And
Question here.
yes.
I found an interesting website I'd like to share in case there's somebody here who has not heard about it. And it's called missingmoney.com. My cousin called me and told me that my mother's name was on missingmoney.com and she died in 2000. So I ended up checking into it and I got several $1,000s that I did not know that my mother had money way out in outer space somewhere. I thought I had closed out all of her accounts, my name was on it, and still there was a Prudential account that there was more dividends put in or some slip up, and they didn't give it to me directly. It went to missingmoney.com, so I'd like to share their website with everybody.
Yeah, you know, I've heard something about this, and it certainly couldn't hurt. I'm looking at it, and I have family in Michigan, so I don't think that's me, but it's probably somebody I know. I don't know, I've never used it before, I'd have to look into that, but it's legitimate. It's the real deal. Yes?
Question, I just went to Windows 8, got a new computer, and working my way through what it's all about, and they have something in there called Windows Defender, I think, that comes with the software.
That's right.
And it seems to get high marks, and what would you recommend in the way of just using that as your antivirus software, or should one go with ADG or some of these other antivirus programs in addition to Windows Defender, or do you have to turn it off if you use another one, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, no antivirus program can protect you 100%. So what I don't like about the ones that charge is it feels a little gangster to me. It feels a little 1930s. Norton walks up to your door with a crooked nose and it says, "You got a pretty nice place here." It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it. So I always like the free antivirus. You know, the internet is really the only business model I can think of where you keep giving something to somebody until they pay you to stop. Where else does that business model work? So I'm going to keep giving you viruses and pop-ups until you pay me to, or you pay this other company to make that stop. It reminds me back in the early days, my early days, with the phone book, and you had to pay to not be in the phone book. Should have been the other way around, shouldn't it? But anyway, that whole concept of paying to not get something doesn't sit well with me at all. So Microsoft Defender is the same as Microsoft Security Essentials, which is free and is available for XP, Vista, 7, 8. But 8 already comes with it renamed as Windows Defender. It is not rated highly. It is rated one of the worst. However, viruses aren't really what we're worried about today. What we're primarily worried about are malware, malicious software. Other types of software that fall under a different category than a virus. So I use a combination of about 4 different things to protect every customer's computer. First and foremost, I do use the free Microsoft Security Essentials and Defender. It's just, like I said, it's just called Defender in Windows 8. Yes, I use that. I recommend my customers use it. You never have to pay for it. You never have to uninstall and reinstall it because a new version came out. It takes care of all that for you. But it's not good enough on its own. So I combine that with a paid license of Malware Bytes. You can get a lifetime license of Malware Bytes for about $25, and it's good for the life of the computer. So again, it'll download all the updates automatically. Malware Bytes, I'm told, is removing that lifetime license. They're going to honor anybody who's got it indefinitely, but I'm told they're going to go back to an annual license so they can keep a regular revenue stream coming in. So now's the time to get it if you don't already have it. For $25 and you never have to pay it again, I mean, not for the life of that computer, take that, Norton and McAfee. In fact, John McAfee, I don't know if you've seen some of his latest stunts, but he's an eccentric millionaire. He sold his company many, many years ago, but they still maintain his name. And he was accused of murder in Belize, and I don't know if you remember all this, and then he's making these videos now where he's being silly and making fun of himself. He's not taking himself too seriously, and the business community is not happy with it at all. Intel owns McAfee, and Intel is now removing the McAfee name from McAfee products. So you'll see that change. You won't see the McAfee name soon. It'll all go away, be rebranded. That's just a little piece of useless information I just wanted to put out there. So back to the 4 things. Microsoft Security Essentials, Defender, right? That's the same thing. A paid license of Malware Bytes. That's the only thing you're paying for. A program that's free called Web of Trust. Web of Trust. I go to MyWOT, which is short for Web of Trust, myweboftrust.com. And it's a free download, and you have to download it for each browser. So if you're running Internet Explorer and Google Chrome, you need to download a version. You have to open each browser and download it separately for each browser. So what is it? Web of Trust is a community of folks who, if you choose to participate, you can, rate web pages. So when I do a Google search like Dell support, this is a famous one that people get burned on. Do you see on my Google results these little circles? There's a little red circle here. There's a little green circle here. What do you think that means? Good and bad. And there's a yellow, which means not a good. But you can vote on that. You can go to a website and you can submit whether or not you think a site is good or bad to Web of Trust and add it to the community's overall impression of that site. But let's say you're just doing a Google search, you're not really paying attention to these little dots, and you end up clicking on a red one anyway. You'll get this warning pop up from Web of Trust that says, this website has a poor reputation based on user ratings. It's not a corporation who's got an axe to grind. This is all done by the community. And sometimes the community makes mistakes. Doesn't happen very often, but if you go to a website that you know for a fact is good and that pops up, it still gives you the option to go there anyway. See at the bottom, you can still go to the site if you know that's a good site, or more likely the go back button. Let me choose a different search result. I don't want to do that one. That's the great thing about Google search results. There's typically several of them, not just one. So if the one you picked is dangerous, don't experiment with it. Curiosity killed the cat. Just get out of that. Find a different one. Find one with the green circle. So that's completely free, and it's a browser add-on. And then the 4th thing, it really is just basic keeping Windows up to date. Making sure that, too many people just rely on Windows updates to just automatically take care of itself. You can't do that. Every once in a while, you need to go into windowsupdate.com and check the updates yourself. And also make sure if you have Java, if you have Adobe Flash or Adobe Reader, hackers get in through old versions of those. So either, if you're not using them, take them off. If you are using them, check them for updates. You can usually go to Help on most programs, and there's usually an option under Help that says Check for Updates. If you're...
Here.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned give them enough rope. It seems like my computer always does that to me.
Yeah, does it?
So often with streaming and all the new technology like that, they say you you really need to update your browser or something, how do you know when that's legitimate?
Some websites require a more modern browser. Say you've got Windows XP, for example. Windows XP only goes up to Internet Explorer 8. 9, 10, and 11 cannot be put on Windows XP. And Bank of America might decide that Windows Internet Explorer 8 is too insecure for you to bank at our site. You must upgrade your browser to bank at our site. But you can't because you've got XP. You can't upgrade Internet Explorer. But you can get Google Chrome. You can get Firefox. You could also get Opera. Not many people use Opera, at least not on a computer. They use it on a mobile device. But anyway, by going and getting the latest version of Mozilla's Firefox or Google's Chrome, which is what a lot of XP users have had to do by now because they've run into too many sites where Internet Explorer 8 just isn't cutting it anymore, then you've got a modern browser and you're fine.
But then also like HBO on the go and Showtime, some of those will say you need to upgrade to this video program. And it seems like they bring along a lot of other, as you're going in there and I accept, and they add a lot of other garbage, so to speak, that you click on those too, and then all of a sudden you got a whole package of things.
Yeah, that does happen. Often with free downloads, they're including other things, and people have no idea how they got on their computer when they just installed them. Now, typically, if you don't just click the next button, if you actually read what's on the screen, there's often little checkboxes that say, set Ask to be my default search provider, install McAfee Security Center, and you need to uncheck those boxes before you continue. Or it may say, I agree to the license terms of the Google toolbar. One of the first things I do on any customer computer that comes to me is I go into Add Remove Programs or Programs and Features, depending on what version of Windows it is, and I look through the list for anything that has the word toolbar in it and I take it out. That's just automatic. A lot of people go, I don't know what's in there, I don't know what I can safely remove. If it says toolbar, you can take it out. You don't need it. But as far as a browser goes, you don't have to, I wouldn't click on a link to upgrade my browser. I would just type in Google Chrome into Google, and then I would click that to make sure I'm getting the real Google Chrome from the original source, not something somebody else has made or altered. And as far as HBO or Showtime or anything like that requiring an update, if it's a legitimate site, if it's really HBO, if it's really Showtime, if it's really Netflix, it's going to be okay to do that. But if it's a Google search for a video and it wants you to download that, no. You've got to really consider the source.
And then my final question is, after I've used up all that rope and my computer is now really messed up, now I need to get a technician?
Need to get Kerry Holmes.
You can. Most computers, if you have a Dell, HP, any of the big brands, typically have a way to reset them back to they were out of the box. But you will lose everything. It'll be just like coming home with a new computer when it's done, but it costs you nothing but your time.
Question here.
Yes?
She was first.
Okay, let's go over here and then we'll jump over here next.
Hi, my computer updated to IE 11. I don't know if my husband did it or it did it automatically. At the same time, it downloaded NationZoom, which hijacked my browsers on both IE and Google Chrome.
Well, it wouldn't have done it at the same time.
Well, it appeared to when I went back to history.
Yeah.
Two issues. I went through Google and did a lot of tech support, and I think I've gotten rid of NationZoom. At least it's not showing up as my browser. I also went back to IE 10, but in the process read a lot of people having issues with IE 11, freezing. And that's what it was doing when I first went to use it, but I also have the NationZoom. Should I be concerned about going to IE 11?
I haven't heard anything bad about IE 11. I've been using it myself. I haven't had any bad problems with it. It's very similar to Google Chrome. You could always just dump IE altogether and just go to Google Chrome.
I kind of like IE, but...
They're so similar, I don't know that you could tell them apart, to be honest, with the exception of the little logo. When a browser comes out, when it first comes out, there may be some sites that aren't compatible with it yet. Some corporations are a bit
I've experienced
sluggish
that
to move.
in compatibility mode.
Yeah, exactly. Or you have to roll back to 10 and maybe wait a few months. It's not that anything's wrong with 11, it's just waiting for the other folks to get on board with it. So that's the downside of being a pioneer, being one of the first people to use any new product. But
Any comments on Nation Zoom?
I've never heard of it before, but there's over 75,000 to 100,000 new viruses or threats released out into the internet each and every day. Yeah, it's insane. And it's a multi-billion dollar revenue income for the people who are creating. So they have the motivation.
Now, I run Kaspersky, and I don't know whether this is a virus or a malware, but Kaspersky didn't stop it. But I guess I'll download that malwarebytes.org.
Yeah, Malwarebytes will get along with Kaspersky. You can certainly download it and run it and get a second opinion. Won't cost you anything to do that. And Malwarebytes, in my opinion, just does the best job in that category of software that's currently available. Beyond that, if it still doesn't remove it and there's still a problem, then it probably needs to go to somebody, if you don't want to lose everything, which we go back to what we call a nuke and pave. You wipe the computer out and you restore. It seems to be a theme today. It's something you can do yourself that'll cost you nothing except your time. But if you don't want to have to reinstall your programs or reconfigure your email, you really just want the virus removed and the computer tuned up, you can call someone like me. I do that. Sometimes there are viruses, it doesn't happen very often, sometimes there are viruses that cannot be removed and the computer has to be wiped out. But in those cases, I can always copy the data off of the drive. There is, however, a virus called CryptoLocker, and what it does is it encrypts all of your data, photos, music, documents, and it says you need to pay us $300 by the time this clock hits 0, which is usually about 36 hours, or 3 days actually, I think, 72 hours. And if you don't pay us this money by the time this clock runs out, the code that you need to unlock your files will be destroyed. We won't keep it. We're going to just delete it because we're doing this to hundreds of thousands of people and we need to make room for everybody's code. And we're giving you a little motivation to pay us. Now, what does it tell you when the Swansea Police Department in Massachusetts pays the ransom to the computer hackers? Yep, that's what they did. They paid criminals and encouraged that criminal activity by paying them because the computer that had all the evidence on it got the CryptoLocker virus. All the evidence was encrypted. It would take about 30 to 50 years to unencrypt that data with today's technology. And I think they paid $700 or something like that? $750. The police paid the criminals, and the criminals got away with the money. But they got their data back. But these are criminals. I mean, they could have just taken the money. You never know who you're dealing with. So, if it can happen to the police department, can it happen to you? So that's why we talk about backups all the time. And backup's just a fancy word for making copies. And there's lots of ways people lose their data. They accidentally delete it, they have a hard drive failure, they have a theft, they have a flood, they have a fire. They get a virus. They get a corruption. I could stand up here for an hour telling you all the ways people lose their data. But more than likely, you're going to know, it hasn't happened to me. The one thing everybody who's ever lost data has in common is none of them were expecting it. So just think of that. I know there's a question over...
Yeah, Carrie, thank you very much for all your tips and resources. I'm wondering how many of them apply to an Apple?
Well, you know, Apple's a different world. I'm not an Apple expert. I'm not an Apple guru, as Apple likes to call them. Apple doesn't have as many threats as Windows does because, I mean, if you're going to make something, you want to sell it to the largest majority of people you can. There are more Windows users than there are Apple users. Some people are under the false security or belief that they're somehow impervious because they're running Apple. It's just the hackers don't want to invest that time when the payoff is so much better if they invest that same time in the Windows platform. There have been some viruses. Apple does release updates.
How about
I believe RoboForm's available for the Apple, sure. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, the programs like Antivirus and Malware that I've talked about aren't going to apply. I think there's a version of McAfee that works with the Apple computers, but it's, things like the SourceForge, the classic shell, that's not going to apply. So there are unique problems with Apple computers that don't apply to PCs, just as there are PC problems that don't apply to Apple. So for the most part, really nothing I've talked about up here has anything to do with Apple, with the exception of security. When it comes to using a public Wi-Fi point, a public internet spot, and you're transmitting data or having somebody look over your shoulder, all those things still apply. Opening up or clicking on links from that you don't know. I mean, if you're going to give your information out to somebody, it doesn't matter if you do it on an Apple or a PC. If they mislead you into thinking you went to Bank of America and you start entering your account number and password, you just gave them your account number and password. That happens just the same. The website looks the same on an Apple computer as it does on a PC. So those type of threats still are exactly the same. But anything more specific about idiosyncrasies of Apple, I just don't use them, so I don't really have any tips there.
Question here.
Yes.
In your remarks a few minutes ago, you mentioned, you were talking about security systems, but I just bought an HP, and Kaspersky, which you mentioned, was offered free for a year, so I subscribed to that. I have another one with ESET. Can you just comment on those two, or there may be some others that people are interested in?
There's Ford and Chevy, there's Nissan and Lexus and Toyota and Infiniti, there's Hyundai and Kia and Volkswagen and BMW and Mini Cooper and Jaguar and Land Rover and Volkswagen and Audi, and then there was Yugo and Pontiac and Oldsmobile and Hudson and Pierce Arrow, and it gets down to a personal choice. You're going to run into somebody, and this is where I walk on eggshells because I don't want to be that guy. Don't buy a Ford. Because I had a bad experience with one, therefore everyone they've ever made is bad. Well, then how are they still in business? So I'd like to be more open-minded and think my experiences are just my experiences, and that any reflection on the company will ultimately be decided by the market. They just won't buy their products anymore. I don't like any paid antivirus. That includes Kaspersky and ESET. McAfee and Norton are the two big ones. There's a lot of them out there. Trend Micro is another one. And I don't like a lot of the free ones either. The AVG I used to like, but then you have to uninstall it every year, and then you have to find, they always hide the free version. They're always trying to sell you the current version. There'll be pop-ups that appear. You should buy the full version. So I installed a piece of software to avoid getting viruses, and now I got pop-ups. So that's why I like the Microsoft Security Essentials, or Windows Defender, depending on your version of Windows. It's free and it leaves you alone. It just takes care of itself. I don't have to worry about any year from now when it expires that I have to take it off and put on a new version. That I really like. I can just set it and forget it. And that's the appeal of Microsoft Security Essentials and Malware Bytes and Web of Trust. All of those things just take care of themselves. Every once in a while, Malware Bytes may need you to upgrade it. In other words, it'll update itself, but it needs your help when a new version comes out. It'll say, hey, there's a new version, click here to install it. You have to do that on Malware Bytes. It doesn't do it automatically. But all the updates it'll do automatically. But you don't have to go and find it like you do with AVG. You don't know how many emails I got from people when I was recommending AVG saying, oh, it's not free anymore. I keep getting this pop, it's not free anymore. What do you recommend today? It's always free, it's always been free. AVG's marketing is trying to get you to buy the paid version, and they phrased it in a way that it's easy to misinterpret what it says. That's so annoying to me because it's an unnecessary phone call. That wouldn't happen if the product worked like I think it should, which is how Microsoft Security Essentials works. So ultimately, all that matters is what you like. It doesn't matter what I like. I mean, I could be a professional chef up here, and I could make a plate of chicken wings, and you could say, are those hot and spicy? And I go, oh, no, not at all. And you bite into them, it's the hottest thing you've ever tasted. Am I wrong? To me, they're not hot and spicy. To you, they are. How did you know? The only way you knew was for you to try it. So my goal up here is to give you the information you need to make the best decision that best fits you. I want you to be skeptical of anything you're not familiar with, but I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to be skeptical of it. And I want to give you some information to sites that you can trust. So, for example, Malwarebytes. Kaspersky is a legitimate product. It's just not a product that I would ever use. So, that doesn't mean nobody has to use it. There's plenty of people that use Kaspersky and live and die by it. I mean, they swear by it. I'm not one of those people. And I don't, what they're doing is there's such little profit to be made in a computer that Dell and HP are making deals with these companies to say, look, people are lazy. Let's just put your product on every computer we sell, because they're going to need antivirus. And here's what we'll do. For $100,000, we'll put this on 1 million computers, and you give them a trial period of a certain period of time. And more than likely, they won't know what to do other than renew it. They won't do the research necessary to find out what they can replace it with, because it's just easy to just hit the renew button and give them a credit card number. That's how McAfee and Norton got so big, just through including that stuff on new computers. It's frustrating to me. It'd be like buying a new car and it's covered with decals of local businesses that you've got to peel off before you could, or you're driving around in a big billboard that you're making monthly payments for. That doesn't seem right to me.
Okay, we're running out of time, folks. One last question.
One last one. All right, who's it going to be?
There's 2 hands here. Betty. We'll make it Betty Letters.
I just wanted to ask you whether you were ever going to write another book like you did it earlier. I always found that was very, very helpful. And you could do a lot of the things that you're telling us now and put it in a book like you did. And I think you could have a bestseller.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not a writer. I hate writing with a passion. I like having written, and I'm very proud of the book. But it was torture, 9 months of torture for a book that had a perishable sell-by date of about 2.5 years. It doesn't make any sense for me because it doesn't flow naturally. Some people can crank out, Stephen King can write novels left and right, no problem at all. Me, it's easier for me to make videos, and it's also easier for me to learn by watching somebody do something than from trying to interpret it from a book. So for me, books, they're fine if I want to read a novel, but for training people, I much prefer the YouTube videos. And I would suggest you check them out, because at least that way you can see on your screen exactly what I'm doing on my screen, and there's no guessing, because these websites are always changing and evolving. So the book that was written, even if it just got published, between the writing and the publishing time, something in the book that I have no control over, like if I say, go to Malwarebytes and click on the left corner, that's where you find the software. It may be in the lower right because they redesigned the site. That's easy for me to correct in a video, not so easy on a book. So I can also make about 100 times more money on the videos. And the information is available to everyone equally, regardless of their financial situation. So in countries, I'm getting emails from people in third world countries where they're looking at getting this knowledge and saying, thank you for providing that knowledge, because they don't have a local source for it. That's what's important for me. It doesn't carry the same weight as, I'm an author, but to me it's more effective. The distribution is worldwide. With the book, the distribution was limited to English-speaking countries only, and it's also more immediate. When I release a video, within hours, it's available all over the world. So that's why I will not be writing any more books, but I really appreciate that. But thank you so much for coming out to see me. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I had a good time.
Yay!